Whoever said best friends look out for you were wrong. If they did, I might have still been able to walk. It all began not long ago. My friend Doug, his girlfriend Christy, and I were planning a forest outing, as we like to call it. Of course, I was the one stuck packing the car, while they were just lying on the couch inside the warm house. I cursed under my breath as I crammed the last bag of clothes inside the back of the crappy Prius. A short time later, they came out the house, Christy blushing and warmer than usual. As Doug drove up the icy incline road, I couldn't help feel a bit creeped out. I kept seeing this car follow us the whole way. But every time I tried to tell Doug about it, the car would vanish. But I guess being in the back seat, having nothing better to do than be paranoid on a frosty slope in the dark, can make your mind wander. We finally made it to the campsite at about 7:30 p.m. and started setting up camp. Doug was stuck on tent duty, while Christy and I got firewood duty. Back then, I had a secret crush on her, so I was pretty nervous when we somehow ended up tripping on each other. I had broken into a cold sweat and she managed to get up. I'm not sure, but I think she found it as awkward as I did. After gathering a large amount of firewood, we started heading back to camp. It took us about 5 minutes to find our way back. We arrived at camp and dropped the logs, gaping in shock at what the sight beheld. The entire camp had been torn down, and Doug was nowhere to be found. We heard a loud thumping noise not far from the camp, then again, and finally, once more. The thumps only got louder and Christy began getting close to me. Needless to say, I was kind of happy, yet terrified. I told her to stay as I moved to identify the noise. It was Doug, who was attempting to run from a large silhouetted figure, swinging what appeared to be a hatchet at him. The shadow was in full sprint, trying to dismember my friend. Doug let out a loud, blood-curdling shriek as the axe barely avoided his head. He scrambled to safety, and the figure had lost sight of him. Unluckily, the thing caught me in its sight. It charged towards me. Christy had run off to investigate the cause of the shriek from Doug. Poor Christy. She should have known it was a terrible idea. She should have just stayed put. I scuttled to the Prius, but when I got there, I realized something. Doug had the keys. I saw the shadow approach me, now at a slower pace, holding what was left of Christy. I was horrified to see her internal organs become external. I nearly puked and began letting out the most unpleasant, terrifying screech ever. I snapped and began throwing my fists furiously at the lunatic. He felt a few, I could tell, until he brought the hatchet to my back. I felt an intense, splitting pain and attempted to register what just happened. I screamed for Doug to come help me. He just kept hiding as the figure shambled slowly towards his vehicle. The car drove off, and I was left with the bottom half of my spine in shards. Shortly after, Doug took one glance at me. He grimaced and entered the Prius without a word. He was shaking as he started the vehicle, and he had just left me to die out there. He spaced one detail though. I had a phone. The police arrived in minutes and an ambulance rushed me to the hospital. Upon recovering, I was questioned. It's been a week since then, and they've given up the search. I have yet to see Doug again, and I loathe him every second for what he's done. I hope I never see that waste of space for as long as I live, which sadly, as I'm told, isn't much longer. I'm currently writing this from a scratchy bed of a hospital room. It's 5 in the morning, and I can't sleep. No matter how hard I try, my mind keeps coming back to that night. A few weeks ago, I went camping with my girlfriend. We live in a pretty wooded spot in a cabin, a few miles away from any civilization. So, it wasn't hard to pack up and head out for a few nights to clear our heads. The woods near my home are very beautiful, and oftentimes I'd find myself getting lost in them. Anyway, we'd packed up a tent, some water bottles, a pot, some cans of soup, and 2 sleeping bags, and off we went. I was cooking dinner at the fire when it happened. My girlfriend was in her tent, laying down for a nap. I felt a sting on my arm, like a needle being pushed under the skin, and I dropped the wooden spoon I was sitting with. I noticed a spot on my arm was inflamed, red and risen, and a little black dot had formed there. I examined it, and after a few moments, it began to bleed, a steady trickle of crimson trailing down my arm and onto the ground below. I shrugged it off, figuring it was a mosquito or some other small insect. I made a mental note to pick up some bug spray next time we went out like this, and I moved on. A couple days later, we were back home and I was watching TV when it began to itch. Subtly at first, then growing unbearable, like someone was raking their nails down the length of my arm. It burned. I tried to scratch it, but it only made the pain and burning worse. I went to the doctors. They told me to put some ointment on it and ice. I did, but the pain didn't stop. A few more days passed and I woke up to the sound of a pop from below my bedsheets and found that my arm had begun to sprout red and purple boils, one now oozing pus from where it burst. I quickly ran to the toilet, flipped on the light, and ran it under the cold tap, relieving the pain slightly. Day 5 was when the hallucinations began. I had wrapped my arm in bandages, blood oozing through them. I went to the kitchen to change them when I heard what sounded like the sound of someone laughing from behind me. I quickly turned around but found no one was there. "Babe," I said, wondering if it was my girlfriend I had heard. Then again, it hadn't really sounded like her. It sounded like a child. "Yeah? What is it, hun? Did you just laugh?" No. Why?" I was confused now. I felt the chill run down my spine, and a pain shocked through my arm again. "No reason. It's fine." It definitely was not fine. They got worse and worse. It went from auditory hallucinations to visual. I remember laying in my bed at night when I saw a dark figure approach me fast. I jumped up, finding it strange that I could. I thought I was having some sort of sleep paralysis or nightmare. The thing, whatever it was, got closer and closer to me. But as it approached, I heard the distinct buzzing noise, getting louder and louder as it hit me. The cloud of darkness parted, like flies. I think I nearly pissed myself. I chalked it up to just stress, knowing that my work was getting harder and harder every day. Even harder because the pain in my right arm got worse and worse with it. I woke up in the middle of the night on day 7. I was sweating pinballs. I had some nightmare that I couldn't remember, but I knew it shook me up enough to wake up screaming so loud my girlfriend awoke, asking me what was wrong. I told her, and she kissed my forehead. "Katie, you need to go back to sleep." I know, I said, trying not to worry her. A crease already set in on her forehead from concern. "I will. Promise." "Good." Day 8. The pain had gotten unbearable to live with. I had to call in sick after spewing vomit all over the carpet from the agony. My girlfriend, of course, decided to take care of me, bringing me soup I couldn't eat and a cold cloth for my forehead which had to be removed after I told her I was freezing. You feel so warm, though. Are you sure I don't need to call the doctor? Don't know. Maybe, I said, my mind buzzing and a ringing in my ears. That night, I made my way to the toilet to throw up into the bowl when I saw it. More black holes were in my skin. Not just on my arm now, but spreading like a virus. Down my collarbone, my stomach, my legs, and even my chest. It itched and burned all over. It hurt so bad. I walked into the shower. I turned it all the way to scalding, but I could hardly feel it. The water didn't help, nor did the heat. 5 minutes in, I felt it. It felt like something crawling from the inside of me. I looked down to see something moving from inside the skin. Bumps moving and trailing down my arms and legs. I screamed as the things began to pour out of the black dots in my skin. Small black bugs oozed out of everywhere and fell down the drain. I could feel them writhing and pooling at my feet. I screamed again, louder this time. I watched as the things began to sprout wings from their backs and fly, swarming me. I passed out before my girlfriend burst in, calling the ambulance. And this is where I am now, bandaged in the hospital, bleeding, hooked up to a heart monitor. They told me I had a skin disease, but I know the truth. It was not a skin disease that made bugs pop out of my skin. I was horrified about what happened, but glad it was over. Today I noticed something. My girlfriend came to visit me today. She brought me flowers and fresh fruit. When she gave them to me, however, I noticed she was itching. A small black dot had begun to form on her skin, and I knew what it was immediately. I was lucky the bug went inside my arm. But my girlfriend's dot is just under her eye.